TG Geeks, episode 116, May 1st, 2017. What does B&B stand for anyway? Bias and bigotry? Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery, sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, you name it, we talk about it. I am Keith Lane and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely, windy Phoenix, Arizona.
And I'm Ben Raggington, coming to you from a lovely bed and breakfast. No, I'm not. I'm at TG Squared Studios as well, here in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes, we have a great interview for you this time. We have the director of the new film, B&B. We ran an article on it, and we ran a review of it.
Did a review of that last, came out Friday?
Was Friday? Yeah.
I can't remember anymore.
Yeah. I will warn you, though, Skype was not being our friend when we recorded this interview.
There's some audio issues, but for the most part, it clears up in the second half.
Yeah,
again,
so if there's some glitches in the editing and you get part of a sentence and then it jolts you to the next topic, don't worry about it. It was Skype not being our friend. So we're going to get right to that interview right now. And this time we have on our show Joe Ahearne, who is a writer, director, and most recently of the film B&B that made its U.S. premiere at the Miami LGBT Film Festival. Welcome, Joe, to the show.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here.
Yeah, so tell us about yourself and what it is that, how did you get involved in writing and directing, and what is your background, and then we'll talk about the film B&B.
Okay, well, I had a pretty long and circuitous route into film and television. I started off as a physicist. That's what I did at university. That was a big mistake. I lasted about a term at that and realized I was not going to be a physicist, but I kind of saw out my degree course at the university that I was staying at, and then after that I became an editor, mostly on documentaries, occasionally kind of little dramas, and then I was kind of writing all the time, while I was doing my day job. But eventually I got a few short films off the ground, and they led to some writing on television, and then they allowed me to start directing, and that's kind of pretty much how I started.
Wow.
I have to quickly ask a question. You said you were a physicist. What specific branch of physics were you looking into?
Theoretical, and astrophysics was kind of my
oh wow
years, but also
that's kind of
there's a bit of a link there. I mean, a lot of the ideas I've done kind of a little bit oriented towards that.
That's the area that Keith and I mean, neither of us have studied astrophysics. I mean, purely from a layman's point of view, but that's an area that we've, as far as just being Joe Q public. That's the area that we love the most.
Yeah,
astrophysics. We love it. We're fascinated by it.
So tell us about B&B. What started this, and how did that grow, and what was the impetus for making that film?
Well, there were two really. One was a visit that me and my husband made to a B&B in England, which shall remain nameless, and nothing kind of bizarre or weird or terrible happened. But we just both had a kind of a vibe that we weren't entirely comfortable to be there. There's something different to me. There's something different about staying at a hotel as to staying in kind of someone's home, essentially, which is what B&Bs often are.
Right.
And we just felt it was a little bit, didn't feel quite right. We weren't threatened in any kind of way, but we started talking about it, and an idea started to blossom naturally about, well, what if you really were threatened? And quite often when you go to a B&B, you're going to quite isolated places. There's also been stuff in the news, not just in the UK, but I mean worldwide really, with gay people being, refused services, whether it's people baking cakes or hotels or stuff to do with weddings. There's quite a lot of pushback now with gay rights, largely, but not exclusively, from people who hold religion, close to their hearts. They feel for whatever reason that they don't feel able to allow people, gay people to enjoy their full human rights, by which I mean marriage and so on. So that was going on. And the other impetus was my longtime friend and producer, who I met way, way back when I was studying film and television at Bristol University, where this film was shot. And she asked me if I had any scripts in the closet, as it were, any low-budget scripts that I wanted to get made. And I didn't, because I've done a lot of TV, and I have written some feature scripts, one of which has been made, others which are in development, and none of them were really, they weren't stuff that you could do on the cheap. And I think to do a really good low-budget film, you sort of have to write it with that in mind. You can't just kind of take a mid-budget film or idea and then try and do it with very little money. You've got to kind of write something that is really geared towards that. So I've been thinking about this B&B idea, and I decided to do that. The first version of the idea was quite different to what ended up getting made, but that's fairly par of the course for lots of stories, really.
Right.
One of the things go ahead.
You talk about low budget. I think IMDb says it was I don't know, it was 1 million was
yeah.
Was that pounds or dollars?
Dollars.
$1 million. So
that is cheap.
1.2 million pounds or something like that.
No, the other way. It's about 700,000 pounds.
Because So wow, that is fairly low.
Very low budget.
But it's I think it's a great film.
It's beautifully shot. I mean, one of the first
much.
things that I noticed is while watching this film is the quality of it. And we've been to a number of film festivals. We've attended a film festival in San Diego that we go to every year, Horrible Imaginings, and they've had a GLBT block there.
And we sponsored that.
We sponsored that 2 years now, and some of the films are beautifully shot, very professional looking. Others look they betray the low budget. Not to say that they aren't good. They just don't look. They just look low budget, and there was nothing about yours nothing about B&B that looked low budget. It looked really, it was slick.
Yeah,
very slick looking.
And I would say that probably, did you do a couple of helicopter shots? Was that? Because it seemed like there were a couple of helicopter shots, and I think probably half your budget was that.
Yeah, so we couldn't afford a helicopter, but we got a drone, which is almost as good.
Oh, wow.
I wondered about that.
Yeah. I thought, wow.
The shots took forever to do, but they're worth it because you get a kind of value that you don't get with a crane. And
right.
Those are the kind of things when you do low-budget movies, you sort of try, and it's not necessarily that you're trying to disguise it as a low-budget film, but you're trying not to compromise. So you're trying to do it exactly the way you would do if you had a fully resourced production. So that's what we aim to do.
Now, one of the things that I noticed about this film, you were talking about how the impetus behind it, and what inspired you to write this. This doesn't play like most gay thrillers. Most gay thrillers are extremely black and white. You've got your protagonists, you've got your antagonists. Good guy, bad guy, end of story, good guy wins at the end of the day. This one does not play that way. What was your desire to write these characters in the way that you did?
Well, you're right. So it doesn't really look like any gay films that I've seen, which is, that's why I wanted to do it, because I haven't seen very many gay films, for example, where they're not kind of, most gay films are relationship pieces or character pieces or boy meets boy and that kind of stuff. I haven't seen too many thrillers, and I've certainly haven't seen any thrillers where it's a married couple, at the centre of it. That's partly because I haven't been married couples for very long, but also because I don't know, because gay cinema is still relatively new in terms of the history of cinema. We're still finding our feet a little bit on what kind of stories that we're allowed to tell, and I really just wanted to tell a thriller, like a Hitchcock thriller, where it happens to be a gay couple who are having that adventure. I think what's happened a lot with cinema and TV is that gay characters have come from being villains and figures of fun and kind of, friend of the main woman or whatever it is. They've gone from being that to being saints, and
right.
A lot of films and TV have missed out the bit in the middle, which is like being like how everybody else is.
Yeah, being real people.
Shades of grey and not black and white.
Right.
In B&B, all the characters are right and wrong, and it's no more than that terrible cliche. Your film is really only as good as your villain. So if you're going to pick a villain, if you like I was calling the antagonist rather than the villain in this piece, which is a religious guy who doesn't feel basically that men should be allowed to marry.
Well,
very easy to write that character as either an idiot or someone with no sense of humor, or someone who's completely unpleasant and you don't want to be in the same space as him. I think for me as a viewer, it's much more interesting and much more rewarding to give that character as many good lines as you can, to make him as funny as you can, to make him as smart as you can, and to make him as sympathetic as you can. And that makes it a really worrying experience to watch, which is what you want from a suspense thriller. When you watch B&B, I hope that people will be looking at it and really having their sympathies tested, if you like. That the gay people, one of them is a little bit annoying, and you can sort of almost see other people's points of view. I think that's the best case when you've got two irreconcilable viewpoints and they both absolutely think they're right, and in their own world they are right. But a lot of people
exactly.
forget to remind the audience that the villain thinks they're right too. They're in the star of their own movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, I found myself at one point not liking the character of Mark so much, but really beginning to like Josh, because he actually came off as less antagonistic, and that was one of the things that just completely threw me in terms of where this film was going. And it's one of those movies that you really have to kind of think about after it's over. I mean, it's not just, oh, that was a wonderful little movie, now let's just go pop off, have a coffee or something like that. I mean, it was just, I had to really think about this one.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's very much what I was aiming for. I mean, I'm a big fan of, I don't know if you watched the TV series Mad Men.
Seen some of it, yes.
Mad Men for me is like one of the best things that's been on TV ever, right? And one of the things that's great about it is that you want to have a conversation after things finished. So much drama, whether it's TV or film or whatever it is, it's all tied up nicely in a bow at the end, and you go away and you forget about it 5 minutes later. And I like those kind of films, like in Mad Men, for example. Every episode, you really want to have a conversation with someone, whether it's your significant other or someone else. Say, did that mean what I think it meant? What was she really thinking when she did that? And would he really do that? Those are the kind of films that I really like. Hitchcock called it icebox talk, I think. When the couple go back to the house after the movie and they're looking for leftovers in the fridge and they're talking about film. That's the kind of film I like.
Right.
Well, I know that,
and that's what we did.
Yeah,
after the film. And in fact, we paused it in the middle of watching it and talked about it, and then afterwards we talked about it again. And it was like, wow, that was really interesting. What was going on there?
What did we just watch?
What did we just watch?
And I know that at one point, we started watching it. We were eating dinner while watching the film, and then we paused it so we could clean up. And I was in the kitchen. I was cleaning up and just thinking,
ruminating.
Really, yeah, I was just really ruminating, just really, percolating on what I had seen up to that point. And we'd only gotten like maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the movie.
I think one of the things that only really occurred to me later, because I think writing anything, or certainly writing anything good, is a pretty unconscious process. I don't really know consciously what I'm doing a lot of the time when I come up with ideas. They just come up and you sort of rationalize them and edit them and try to make them kind of consistent. But you're not always aware until after you've done it, really, what you've done. And one of the things that occurred to me after I'd finished it was that it's very much a kind of inversion of how it was when I was growing up. Because when I was growing up, and we're going back away now. I mean, we're talking the 70s, and in the UK, certainly you could be out and proud, but society was very different back then, and the message society was giving you was very much, don't talk about yourself. We might just about tolerate you if you're lucky, but you just keep your mouth shut and maybe you'll be okay. That's pretty much what the vibe was when I was growing up in the UK.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating to me now is that it's flipped round, and in contemporary society, certainly in cities, and obviously there's lots of countries around the world, and there's lots of places where you could say that's still going on. But in a lot of big kind of metropolitan centres, gay people, have it a lot better than people kind of growing up decades ago. And it's kind of flipped around now, where it's a lot of the religious people who are feeling, I think, exactly what I felt when I was growing up. It's like, you keep your religion to yourself. You're now not allowed to express what you think in your heart about people's sexuality. And I thought it's now, and I'm afraid I happen to agree with that. I think they should keep their mouths shut now. But I wanted to make a film where, you had a bit of sympathy for the devil, because from my point of view, I think, religion has caused a lot of damage to gay people growing up, and I think it continues to go on. And those people are now on the back foot, and they're pushing back hard. And I think that's I think that's how it should be. I think they should be put under pressure, and I think religion should be pushed more into the private sphere. I know that's it's anything probably a hotter issue here in the States than it is in the UK, which is, it's much more secular. But I thought it'd be interesting to do a film where those characters are now, in the minority, and we're kind of predisposed to have some sympathy for minorities, and it seemed to be screwed up in an interesting way. That if you've got, for example, a gay audience watching this and being invited to have some bit of sympathy, however tiny, for these people who are actually, trying to deny us our rights.
Exactly, and I'll just say that we're just a couple of years older than you.
Yeah,
so.
we're the same generation.
I was born in '60, and he was born in '61. So
wow.
we're in the
generation.
same generation.
We're the same,
we
so
do
we understand.
And we were at the opera here several weeks ago, and there was this young boy. He couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, 12 years old, middle school, and he was just swishing away
Wow.
and had his purse and everything, and I thought, oh my God, it
Yeah.
has changed so much in the way, and you can see that sensibility in Mark and Fred because they're of a much different generation than we are, and they believe that out and proud and in your face, and and we grew up where that certainly
might be off-putting.
get you bashed, if you will. So
Well, absolutely. And in the case of the main character, Mark, who's played by Tom Bateman, people are not, and I would agree that, even as a gay person, you're looking at what he's doing and you're saying, is it really necessary for you to go so far? Okay, you've won your court case, you've ruined this guy,
Exactly.
You've demonstrated publicly that he's in the wrong. You still want to go back there a year later and, have sex in his double bed in order to prove a point? Aren't you just pushing it too far? So, a lot of people have said that character, God, isn't he a little bit too full on, a bit annoying? And I sympathize with that, but I also think, hey, those are the guys are the reasons why I can get married now.
exactly.
Those
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
making-
exactly.
those
Oh,
people
yeah.
making trouble.
Oh.
That's why he's the hero.
Absolutely. I
Absolutely.
mean, I remember, especially during the AIDS crisis,
The
I mean,
ACT UP.
you
Oh,
had
my
the
God.
ACT UP organization,
Oh, my
and
Lord.
they were beyond militant. I mean, they were just really unpleasant to be around, but they were the ones who helped push forward the research and the necessary medical care that so many people who were afflicted with HIV needed to have. And in terms of Mark, you gave his husband Fred just one of the greatest lines, and he says he's a sore winner.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just-
That's right.
and I don't know
Well,
you.
I think there's elements of me. I hope people recognise themselves in all sorts of, in all the different characters. But I hope a lot of gay couples in particular will recognise a certain kind of dynamic. I mean, that there's always, I don't know, always. There's quite often, one's a bit more bolshy than the other. I mean, I'm the kind of person. When I was, first going to hotels with my husband like 20 years ago, whatever, and straight out of the movie, actually, not in terms of a homophobic B&B, but going to a hotel and you booked a double room, you go up to your room, hey presto, it's 2 single beds,
Right,
and my
exactly.
husband would be, look, we'll just push them together, it's exactly the same, and get down to reception and very politely say, I booked a double bed, can we have a double room? Yeah. And he would hate that because he would think that's like, what's the big deal, and it's not really a big deal, but
Right.
I can't help myself from it.
Yeah, we've been together for almost 21 years,
Mhm.
and early on, it
In
was
the beginning.
it was a little difficult to
Now it's
Yeah,
we
it's like,
haven't had an issue.
Who cares?
I mean, even in little tiny places, like Tucumcari, New Mexico, we've had no problem getting a double.
yeah. So
Yeah, well, in the UK, I mean, people often quote 1967 as being the date where gay people got their rights. Okay, that was when homosexuality was decriminalised.
right.
But in the UK, it was only decriminalised between 2 men in private, right? So that did not include going to hotels.
Right.
It did not include having some guy able to stay in your house while
Right.
you were with a guy. So it was really quite specific. And I think it was only round about the turn of the millennium that it was finally, that aspect of it was repealed in the European courts.
Wow, that's amazing. So I really enjoyed all of the characters and the way you played them as being real characters, and the moment between Mark and Josh was really very poignant, and then the whole fallout from that, and without giving too many spoilers, I appreciate what you did with those two characters and the way it played out.
Thank you.
It,
Thank you. Well, I mean, I made this film like, it was. I think I wrote it maybe just a year or two after my father died. And I think there's a lot of that in it. It's about, it's about obviously a love relationship between two guys in marriage, but it's also very much about father-son relationships.
Absolutely, yeah, and I can appreciate what was done there, and you can see the pain on Mark's face that he wishes that his father had said that to him.
Yeah.
And,
he plays that beautifully, and yet that's an example of what a wonderful actor can do, because believe me, I really didn't understand that scene until he performed it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he performed it like that, I realized, oh Christ, of course that's what the scene is about.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's one thing.
I did not really understand it.
That's what Keith and I were talking about last night as we were continuing to discuss the film. That scene with Mark and Josh. I mean, when Mark just looks at him and you see the tears in his eyes, and he says, "Tell him you love him." It's like, what?
No matter what.
No matter what. It's like, wow. It just all of a sudden I understood that character. Like, new layers all of a sudden became visible to me. It was such a beautiful moment, and that's one of the nice things about this film is that, in spite of being a thriller, a suspense film, there are some really beautiful moments of human interaction. And I say human interaction. It's just some very well developed characters here, and some of the cast just did an amazing job at acting this out.
And I think that was the turning point of the film too.
It is. I think it literally is. I think in movie jargon, they call it. I think it's the halfway point, or very near the halfway point.
Mm-hmm.
The point of no return, I think they call it. But a lot of credit of that has to go to the actors, because particularly with they're all wonderful. But to take one example with Tom and Sean, who play the married couple, it's quite unusual to do a film, whether gay or not, where it starts with a married couple, because people tend to want to see characters apart and then come together and then fancy each other and then go to the next space and whatever. And with a film like this, you don't have any of that. So you kind of got to believe that these two guys are in love, and not just in love, but to be married and are really comfortable with each other and have this kind of dynamic really from the first few minutes they enter into the film. And that's down to those two guys. I mean, they really took it upon themselves to do a lot of work off set and to hang out and to make friends with each other. And I think a lot of that transmitted onto the film, because you can't. I'm very interested in Hitchcock, and I'm very interested in camera techniques and tricks and so on. But none of those things can help you if the relationship isn't there, and that's what they're in charge of.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, looking at your IMDb resume, and you've got one heck of a resume. You directed quite a few things. I'm just curious, when it comes to directing, do you find it easier to direct material that you've written as opposed to material that other people have written?
It's only easier to the extent that you can fix it a lot quicker. I mean, people tend to think with writers and directors, well, there are two kinds, I would say. There are writer-directors and there are director-writers, and I'm more in the latter group. So I'm not really like a writer who is trying to protect their words, and trying to make sure it doesn't get kind of changed or whatever. I'm delighted when actors come on board. As soon as they come on board, they change loads of stuff. And certainly in this script, not just lines of dialogue, but actually plot points as well. Once you get them into rehearsal and you discuss what works and what doesn't work, they're a much better barometer, I think, of the truth of the characters than I am as the writer, or even a lot of the people who develop the script as it goes on, because they inhabit the characters at a much deeper level, I think. So I suppose I'm the kind of filmmaker that I'm very interested in the directing process, and the script is a tool to get to that, rather than me trying to make sure that nothing changes. I think other people have different views, I think. And I think what's difficult, or what can be difficult, is when you're directing someone else's script, and sometimes you can get a script and you don't want to do anything to it. So I've worked on Doctor Who, and you get a Russell T Davies script. I mean, you don't want to change any of that. I think it's superb. Sometimes, though, you're working on scripts, even with really good writers, where you get it on the floor and you've got the actors, and something doesn't quite work, and it's just really easy to fix it by either cutting a line or changing line. And you don't really have that prerogative as a director if you haven't written it. And I suppose that's the only thing that's easier. It's that you can have, I think, a much more collaborative process with the actors if you've written it yourself. I think there are circumstances where
certainly in TV, I think maybe more so in America.
Yeah.
In American TV, I think it's much more the culture of the writers also being producers. So they're there on set. And, in television over here, I gather, I have worked as a director over here, the writer is really very much the boss on set. They'll quite often talk to the actors, and the directors are a little bit, I would say, reduced in status, let's say, unless you're doing the pilot. So, I guess that's what I do when I'm directing. Everyone's different.
Yeah, I was going to ask on the Doctor Who scripts, since those were Russell's scripts, how easy was it to direct his scripts?
Well, I worked on 5 episodes altogether, and 3 of them were written by Russell, and those were the last 3 that I directed. The other 2 were Robert Shearman and Paul Cornell, also wonderful writers. They're kind of, I wouldn't say easy. I mean, they're technically difficult because when I did Doctor Who, it was 12 years ago, and it was the first series, so they didn't have, I wouldn't say the luxury, but I would say we didn't have the confidence of knowing that it was going to be the hit that it was. So, I would say everyone was a little bit more kind of nervous, let's say. And also the scripts are very ambitious for the budget. And I think that was probably the most kind of difficult aspect that, I think whenever you're filming anything, certainly at my level, every day is just on the edge of impossible. That's how it's scheduled. You want to try and cram as much in as you can, and no one gives you like a day more than they possibly think they can get away with. So with Doctor Who, it was no different. You're given I can't remember whether it was 10 or 12 days just to shoot them, but you've got, you might have a scene with 200 soldiers and an army of Daleks or whatever, and you've got to find a way of doing that. So with Doctor Who, it's with those kind of complicated shows, it's very much a logistic challenge, but also in that you've also got to try and again not forget the actors, because what happens a lot with the kind of shows that I do, because I've done a lot of science fiction and horror and stuff that's got prosthetics and action and CGI and whatever, and because it takes let's say someone's got to jump out of a window, that's going to take half a day to shoot. It might be one shot, and what happens is you spend a half day on that, and a simple, let's say, inverted commas, simple technical scene with 2 actors sat around a table, the temptation to say, oh, you can do that in a couple of hours. And so what happens on the kind of big technical shows is that if you're not careful, the actors can start to feel shortchanged because they're not being given their emotional time, and they're seeing a lot of time being spent on explosions and kind of what have you.
Right.
And so as a director, you just always got to keep your eye on that.
Right.
You just pretty much answered the question I was about to throw out there, because as it is, I think you directed probably what most Doctor Who fans consider to be the single best episode of that entire first season, and that was Dalek.
Oh my gosh!
I mean,
yes.
that is an unbelievably brilliant episode on so many levels. And I was wondering, what are some of the challenges? I mean, as we've seen with B&B, I mean, this is it's almost a minimalist film in that there's not a lot of there's very little practical effects. I mean, there's a slight visual effect using infrared goggles and such. And I was just wondering, what are the different kinds of challenges that you face doing something that is very sci-fi? Because you are very much a sci-fi horror thriller kind of director based on your resume. What are some of the challenges that you face and difficulties doing the big science fiction kind of shows, that's very visual, versus something that's like Black B&B that's very personal in terms of character interaction?
Well, with Doctor Who, I think the biggest challenge was if you didn't get it right, half the world would want to kill you.
True.
No pressure.
No pressure at all.
No pressure.
Dalek episode,
Exactly.
Come back. They're on the cover of every magazine. But everybody was aware of that. I mean, not just me. And luckily it was a great script. And I don't know if you had the idea of making it about one Dalek, but that was a stroke of genius. That was the stroke of genius, I think, because you were able to do something which I don't know if had been attempted before, was to actually treat the Dalek as a character.
Exactly.
So that's where we, again, a lot of it, so much of directing, I think it's true of film. I haven't been involved in film that much, but certainly in TV, so much of the job is about time management, and so much of the problems you run up against creatively or emotionally with colleagues and whatever is when you've misjudged
the amount of time you should spend on something. So, for example, I knew that the first confrontation with the Dalek was a really important scene, and I can't remember whether it's a 3 or 4 page scene or whatever. And I made sure that we had enough time to film it, and what that meant was not just having enough time to film it the way that I guessed that we want to film it, storyboarding it and so on, but also giving enough time so that the actors, and that includes Nick Brinks as Dalek, would have time to do different things and to try different stuff, because nothing's worse than when an actor feels like they're being treated like a robot, and the director or whoever has kind of plotted it all out beforehand, and they're just being used. All the actors have to be given a bit of space and a bit of time to have an idea and to try things different ways. And the enemy of everything in TV, I think, is time. And it's only as I've got older and done more and more of it and made terrible mistakes that I now understand that, and things tend to go quite smoothly on my shoots, because I try as far as possible to protect certain pockets of time for actors and so on, and people appreciate that, and then they're prepared to not get difficult when you're up against it and you've got to do things fast. I mean, you must have heard that old line. It's features in the morning and documentaries in the afternoon. That's how it works. You're lining up these beautiful shots at 9 o'clock in the morning. By the time you get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're handheld and you're running around, trying to cover it all. So I think time management was one of the biggest things about that. And I think, I went into directing. The reason why I was interested to be a director was because I grew up on Hitchcock films and Brian De Palma and Star Wars and other kind of things. And so I'm really interested in material where there's something for the director to do other than just point the camera at whoever's speaking. And having said that, actors are the centre of it all, which they are, and they are the most important thing.
Right.
I don't want to just be talking to the actor about the performance. I love it when occasionally, and it doesn't happen enough on television, characters shut up and let the camera tell some of the story, and they're either watching things or you're basically transmitting information and emotion to the audience non-verbally, without exposition. And Doctor Who, of course, is fantastic like that. It's a dream for a director, because you've got lots of concentrated sequences where it's purely about, it's largely about camera storytelling, chase sequences or shot moments or whatever, and that is very rewarding and thrilling to be part of as a director. Having said that, when I first signed on to do Doctor Who, I was only going to do 2 episodes. I was going to do the Dalek one and the Father's Day one by Paul Cornell, and that was it. But they asked me to come back to do the season finale, and
Bad
those
Wolf,
scripts.
Boomtown.
Yeah, so I couldn't say no to that. And then there was another episode came up at the last minute, so I ended up doing 5, which was much more than I had intended doing. And by the end of the year of it, and I am quite a big Doctor Who comics geek, all that stuff.
I was just about to ask.
I was geeked out by the end of it, basically. So by the time I'd finished a year of that, and I'd done some big science fiction shows in the years prior to that, I really just wanted to be in a room with 2 actors talking, because you seesaw between lots of extremes. It is very exciting to be, in the last season finale of Doctor Who. One of the problems is when you come to the end of a long run, it was 13 episodes, all the other directors, including myself, when you're filming early on in the series, you have a little bit of a safety net, which is that if you don't get a shot or if something runs out, then someone can always pick it up a few weeks later, or you can come back and do it. When you're doing the last 2 episodes and the actors are going out of contract, you have no backstop at all. You've got to finish on a certain date, and that's it. So by the time of the last 2 episodes, we were running 3 sets simultaneously. So I'd be on one set, directing the Emperor Dalek, and I'd be running literally to another set while we were shooting Daleks exterminating people in corridors. Then I'd be running to a 3rd set where we're doing an emotional scene between Billie Piper and her mother. And, that's, in a way, that's quite exciting and adrenalizing. But after you've done that for a while, you just want to have a bit of a lie down.
Yeah.
Something that's maybe a little bit less technically challenging. So after Doctor Who, I did a couple of shows which were, more like B&B. I did one with Chris Eccleston, actually, a kind of a TV movie, and then I did another TV movie which were much less kind of visually in your face. And I've tended to kind of oscillate between the two all through my career.
Right. So That was going to be one of my questions. Were you a Doctor Who fan? Because we are both.
We're huge Who fans.
I've been watching Doctor Who since 1975.
I've been watching it
And so you should. And so you should.
I've been watching it since 1981.
What were you doing before 1975?
Actually, I was reading a lot, but it was some friends and two friends that are one is still a very close friend that I was over at their house and they watched Monty Python and then Doctor Who, and that was run on PBS at the time. And of course, I still remember the old Lionheart logo at the end.
They were the American distributors for Doctor Who.
It was, in fact, my first episode was the one that introduced K9.
Invisible Enemy.
Yeah, I always want to say Mind of Evil, but Invisible Enemy was Tom Baker episode. And just so you know,
oh, this is hilarious. I know where you're going with this.
It was Doctor Who that actually brought us together.
Yep.
Oh, how fantastic!
I am not joking.
Wonderful.
Yep. In fact, we were having a conversation about Babylon 5, and it was kind of an awkward conversation to start with, and then we started sitting down and
start talking about genre television
and Star Trek and all the iterations, and then I said, I don't know if you know about this one sci-fi program, but it is my all-time favorite.
And of course, I just kind of, at this point, I'm like, oh, I love a challenge. And I kind of leaned forward and I said, tell me.
And I said, Doctor Who.
And I kid you not, I stood up. He was sitting, we were sitting at a round table, and he's we're literally opposite from each other. I almost jumped over the table, and I said, Doctor Who, I have almost every episode on videotape.
And I thought,
wonderful.
Oh my God, this guy is absolutely crazy, but I love it. He's got Doctor Who on every episode.
You found the one, yeah?
Exactly.
And,
exactly.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
A little over 21, almost 21
years ago now.
So.
Yeah, still quite the big Doctor Who fans.
Yep.
Okay, since we talked about Doctor Who, now this is the segue. Paul McGann.
Yes.
How did you nail that guy? How did you manage to get him in on this? Because that was like, holy crap!
Of course,
Paul.
Russell Davies says Paul McGann doesn't count. So
yeah, for those who've seen Queer as Folk. The British version.
I resisted writing that in the press release thing that I did for the film in parentheses.
Because no one's going to get it.
Paul McGann doesn't count, but I thought, no, I won't say that.
Outside of the UK, no one's going to know that.
Was that character in Queer as Folk who said that?
Yeah, it was a character.
Yeah.
The two of the leads. He says to one, your idea of a perfect mate is someone who can name off every character or every actor who ever played Doctor Who. And then he challenges him, and at that point, it had only gotten as high as, I think, Sylvester McCoy. No, it had gotten to Paul McGann. And then he rattles off all the characters, and then his friend says, what about Paul McGann? And then the two of them say at the same time, Paul McGann doesn't count.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I'm sure he regrets saying it. Well, it's a character. It's not Russell. But of course, Paul McGann counts. He was a wonderful doctor.
He was a great doctor. I loved that. We still have it on.
We have it on the Apple TV.
Yeah, we have it on our Apple TV, so we watch it every once in a while.
He's the best thing about that entire show. And when he showed up in Night of the Doctor, I almost had a geekasm at that point. I was literally just jumping down up.
He was magnificent, I thought. Both as a doctor in the original kind of TV. But when Stephen Moffat brought him back for that 10-minute webisode or whatever it was called, he was he just absolutely nailed it. He's magnificent.
Yep.
So getting Paul McGann to play the part of Josh, was this just an offer to him? Did he answer a casting call?
Oh yeah, all the actors were offers. I knew his work, obviously. I knew him a tiny bit socially, but not really. Like, I'd met him, maybe 3 or 4, 5 times over the years. And I've always been a fan. I don't know how do you know With Nail and I?
No. I'm familiar with the title, but that's all.
Oh, well, you must see that. It's absolutely. In Britain, it's a really iconic film. I didn't see it until quite a long while after it was made. It was made in around 1987, I think, and it's about a couple of out-of-work actors who go on holiday and have a terrible time.
How old is
it?
Actually,
I've described B&B a little bit like what
the characters from With Nail and I go to the Bates Motel, you know,
Right,
the more
right.
kind of heightened version. It's got a lot of the most quotable lines of all time. That movie.
Oh.
So I see him in lots of stuff, and he's, you know, yes, obviously there's a Doctor Who thing, but he's a consummate actor, and I think, you know, what he does in B&B is he really, well, I think he approached the character like any great actor, which is that he's, you know, he wants to play the truth, obviously, but no one thinks they're the bad guy. You know, he's not the bad guy.
No.
He's got his own story to tell. He's got a very
Exactly.
good journey, I think, in terms of his relationship with his, you know, his son, and he goes through agonies and whatever. And Paul, like any good actor, is not judging the character. We might judge him as an audience, say, well, you know, we don't like your views, we think you're homophobic, we think whatever. But none of that really, I mean, in terms of a drama, that kind of thing, it matters, but it also doesn't matter, because you're watching these two people go at each other. And to me, it's uninteresting if you've got a drama where the good guys are saints and the bad guys are the devil, you know, unless they are
Right.
a devil or an alien or
Right.
whatever. Much more interesting when you make the villain as sympathetic as you possibly can. And it makes it, I think, and I'm talking as a, you know, from a gay audience perspective, maybe it's very disturbing to see a film where someone who's so obviously wrong and would deny us even the rights that we've got, if he could, for him to be going in there and playing with our sympathies. And there are places in the film where you're almost tempted to cross over to his side
Absolutely.
and see it from his point of view.
Yeah.
I think that's a more interesting drama for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really appreciated the film that it was about real people and real interaction, and it was very real. And while the ending was somewhat unsettling and really didn't resolve, it was life.
Mhm.
It was real life. You know, because rarely is real life ever happy ending. You
Yeah,
know?
you know, and we, you know, and our favorite people, you know, they go, you know, walking off into the sunset holding hands. You don't get that here.
No, I mean, again, I'm a big fan of movies where people, you know, it can be very satisfying for a film for, you know, there to be a big kiss at the end, or they walk off, or whatever, and that's all great. But I also quite like films where you're left with a slightly nagging feeling of that thing of what we talked about before, making you want to talk about it and it not being tied up with a bow, because, again, without giving it too much away, nobody in this film really gets exactly what they want.
Exactly.
You know, they've had their worldview tested a little bit, and that to me is what, again, other films are different. I mean, but, you know, in a drama, let's say, if you've got it all wrapped up in a bow at the end, I reckon you forget about it 10 minutes later. And
Exactly.
the films that stay with you on a subconscious level are the ones that are worrying away at these sort of visceral things. Because it's I think it's very dangerous as a dramatist to make a film about, you know, race or sexuality or sexism or whatever, because it's difficult to get I would say, a really satisfying dramatic interaction out of that, precisely because, in my view, sexism, homophobia, racism, they're indefensible, right? So how could you get an interesting villain out of that? If you have a good guy who's basically trying to, you know, protest against whatever. And I see that, obviously there are great films like that take a slightly different tack, like I'm sure you've seen Pride and things like that, which are incredibly satisfying political movies, if you like, about a point in history. As a filmmaker, I find it difficult because I don't want to have characters who we can judge in that way, where we can just say, you know, you're absolutely wrong and you're going to be defeated, the end. It might give you a warm feeling in your belly for a little while, but that's not what drama's for, because I think drama's
Right.
more, it's more complicated than that. You know, it should be more unnerving, let's say, particularly in a thriller, I think. Thrillers and horror films, this isn't exactly a horror film, they operate at a more unconscious level, I think. I suppose that's what I was getting for.
Yeah. They're supposed to kind of tap into the irrational mind. You know, one of the things that I remember thinking this. I didn't write this when I wrote the review, but this was in my head when we got to the ending of B&B, and I'm going to compare it to another film, and they're set in entirely different eras, but I still got that same sense of lack of resolution, and that is with the movie Morris.
Yes.
And Hugh Grant's character at the very end.
That's good film.
I got that same thing, that oh, I can't describe it.
It's just that unsettling.
But there's something very unsettling, almost sad.
Yep.
About how that ended, and I kind of got a little bit of that. I'm not going to give anything away, but I kind of got a little bit of that with the, like with one of the final scenes in B&B. I mean, it's just so well played, and it, to me, it just screamed real life.
Yeah, I think. I mean, again, I was talking to this about with my husband just last night, actually, because it was just screened at the Miami kind of gay festival, and we've obviously seen it a few times and argued about it incessantly. We were talking about the end. We were talking about the ending, and he was saying, don't you think that some people could misinterpret the ending as meaning this, and some people might kind of think that. And I can think, well, that's fantastic. I think it's great that people can come away with it with different things. For me, again, without giving anything away, I think it's quite a hopeful ending. I mean, it ends, you might think, in a somewhat bleak place for one or two of the characters, but I don't think that's the end of their story. I think it might be bleak for a while, but I think it's going to be, you come back to those characters in a couple of years' time, I think it might be quite different.
Well, I think that goes to what you were saying, Keith, about how the story doesn't end. I mean, the main threat or the main plot point may have been resolved, but clearly this story for the characters is not over.
Absolutely, and it's just it's a thinking movie. It's a movie that you have to think about, and I mean, we're 3 days later and we're still talking about
the film. That's got to say something really positive. So I have to ask. Now, we know that the movie did get distribution in the UK and in Ireland. How is this movie being received?
Well, it's very early days. I mean, there've only been 3 public screenings.
Oh,
wow, that new.
The first was a couple of weeks ago at a festival called the London Independent Film Festival, and it won the Best LGBT Film there, which we're very proud of. So that was our first public outing. And since then, it's been at the European Independent Film Festival, and then only just last night at Miami. So we're really just out of the gate.
Wow. So last night,
it's been very good response, and people have. I think people have appreciated the fact that it's a bit different, and it's kind of strange. I think one of the things that's made it a difficult film to set up and get made, and I have to give tribute to my producer Jane Chard, who, I mean, God knows how she got the money together to do this film, because certainly the landscape's perhaps a bit different in the States, but in the UK, we don't really make movies we don't make thrillers for the movies so much in the UK. That must sound like a strange thing, but we do horror films, and we do social realism, we do period and dramas and whatever, but we don't really tend to do straight thrillers. And if we do gay films, they tend to be a particular kind of gay film. And I think the proposition of this film really kind of confused some people, because on the one hand, it's a straight Hitchcock thriller in the sense that it's a very recognizable Hitchcockian tropes. A couple of innocent characters go to a deserted place and have a night of terror, and there is a death and there's scenes of suspense and so on. So that's very recognizable. What's unrecognizable, it's happening to 2 gay men. That is kind of strange for people, and then for people who come to it more from a typical gay movie perspective, it doesn't really look like a lot of gay movies, which are, wonderful though they are often about, relationships or, overt social issues or whatever. There isn't so much that, although the MacGuffin, if you like, is absolutely about a social issue, which is, being denied services at a bed and breakfast or whatever.
Right.
But it quite quickly becomes about more than that.
Right.
So, what kind of film festivals? I mean, I assume there's plenty of film festivals and other places you're going to be taking this movie. Any places that you will be showing it in the near future that you wish to share with our audience?
Well, we're going to be on at a festival in Connecticut on June the 10th. I think that's a festival that's been running for about 20 years or so.
Oh, wow.
And other than that, we're still waiting. So yes, we'll certainly be going to quite a few festivals, I hope, over the next 9 months or so.
Oh, we'll
cool.
certainly hope that you're going to make your way out. If not to Arizona, at least maybe to Southern California or something like that, because we would definitely make the drive out to be there in support of this movie.
Absolutely.
I mean,
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely
I'd love
loved
to.
it. So do you have, I mean, are there any projects coming up in the near future for you that you can talk about, or is everything still sort of on the hush-hush?
It's not so much hush-hush as, the proportion of films that you talk about, the stuff you actually get made. So it's quite not, I would say it's minuscule, but it's like not everything that I'm working on, will actually happen. But they're mostly, I'm working on another thriller with Jane Chard and a producer called Sophie Bell-Hetchett, who was responsible for some of, my favorite TV that I've done in the past, like Ultraviolet, and a TV movie called Trance, which was remade recently by Danny Boyle. So we've Sophie and Jane are hopefully getting the money together to do another film that we'll be shooting next year, hopefully. And on the TV side, lots of kind of big science fiction, paranormal type stuff. I don't do an awful lot of normal drama. Let's say they all tend to have something kind of weird going on, and there's a number of scripts and treatments kind of floating out round about the UK television industry. Still early days. I did a couple of programs last year. One was B&B, and the other was a mini-series for British television. So I'm just getting back into kind of, writing mode and development and trying to get the resources together to do the next thing.
Cool.
Oh, that's cool, because we do have a number of listeners to the show who do live in the UK.
And Ireland and
Yeah.
and all over.
All over the British Isles, so
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be
Oh, cool.
fascinated to know or to follow up on, your directorial projects. Which leads me to this final question. That is, if people want to learn more about you, is there a way that they can do that? Do you have any kind of social media presence, or do you, what about any projects that you do announce? How can people learn more about you?
And what you're doing.
I'm a social media dinosaur. I'll be lucky. I think I'm on IMDb, obviously, so people can kind of see what work I've done there, and those kind of links tend to lead to other things. I'm not, I'm afraid, on Twitter or Facebook, to my shame. But if people want to hear about the latest movie, B&B, there is a website called bnbfilm.co.uk, and that's B&B as in Bravo November Bravo Film.co.uk, and that's got interviews from the cast and myself and the producer and DOP and so on, as well as a trailer, and that's the best kind of starting point for people who are interested in much of what we talked about today.
Great.
Coolness.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Joe Ahearne, for being on our show this time.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a joy being able to talk to you.
Very welcome. Absolute pleasure.
Welcome, curious listeners. This is Jackson Stewart, director of Beyond the Gates. Continue listening to the Two Gay Geeks podcast if you dare.
And here's a few selected birthdays for May 1st through May 7th, 2017. May 1st, Judy Collins, Send in the Clowns.
Yeah? Oh, well, that's just one.
Just one of them.
I mean,
yeah,
the
but that's,
woman had quite a few hits.
Yeah, she did. But that was, it just kind of made sense for this right now. So, anyway.
Okay.
Also on May 1st, Jack Parr, who was Johnny Carson before Johnny Carson was Johnny Carson.
He was, let me see, I'm trying to think in the order of things. Was he the first
He was
Tonight
the very
Show?
first. Yes, he was the very first. He was
Okay.
started the...
Because there was one that was after him then it was Johnny. Because there was this one other, and I can't remember who he is.
Yeah,
Oh,
don't
it's,
remember.
I don't know.
And also on May 1st, a former slicer, Megan Zier. Happy birthday, Megan. May 2nd, Engelbert Humperdinck.
Humperdinck.
Humperdinck. And this is the singer, Engelbert Humperdinck.
Oh,
not
the composer.
Yes. Also on May 2nd, Christine Baranski and Theodore Bickel.
Bickel.
Oh, Bickel. Yes. Also Bing Crosby and Dr. Benjamin Spock.
Not to be confused with...
Spock.
Right.
Yes, I was a Spock baby. My mother tried to kill me with Dr. Spock's advice.
Oh my gosh.
And also on May 2nd, our very own Bionic Geek, Mr. Roy Roberts. Happy birthday,
Roy.
May 3rd, Ann B. Davis.
Alice from Brady
Alice
Bunch.
from Brady Bunch, yes. Also, Niccolo Machiavelli, born in 1469. It showed him as a philosopher.
Oh, was that what they called it?
Yeah, exactly. May 4th, Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, we may need to watch My Fair Lady again.
Yeah, I know you don't like it, but I like Breakfast at Tiffany's too.
No,
so.
that I cannot watch. I will not watch that again. I can't.
She was so she was so elegant.
Well, she
just
was,
was
yes.
so elegant. And also on May 4th, Pia Zadora, Lance Bass, and Howard Da Silva.
Howard Da Silva. Okay, that will from 1776.
Yes,
He played Benjamin Franklin,
Yep.
but
that was what he was most noted for in his later years.
yes, but I
portraying.
also know him for when Doctor Who was being distributed by Lionheart here in the U.S. He provided special narration. Previously on Doctor Who, coming up on Doctor Who. I mean, so
really?
he added a little tag and teaser
Oh, interesting.
with some of the Lionheart distributions. Yes.
Far out. May 5th, Roger Rees.
Oh, let me guess. A Christmas Carol.
Yep. And Lance Henriksen and Pat Carroll.
Oh, now how can he not love Pat Carroll? Ursula.
She's a hoot too. We
I
met
heard-
her at a Mice Chat event.
It was D23.
Oh, a D20. Was it a D20?
Yeah, she was a D23. The woman is insane.
Yep.
She's
also,
nuts.
Also on May 5th, John Rhys Davies, Henry Cavill.
Now, how fortunate is that? I mean, we just watched Man from U.N.C.L.E. last night.
I know. That was kind of interesting.
I had no idea.
Yeah, Michael Palin and our good friend Michael Evans, who is the director of photography on
Origin.
Beyond
the Impact. Yes.
May 6th, Orson Welles, who directed that thing that I can't watch.
Oh no!
Anyway, we won't go there. We'll just be heretics.
Yeah,
we'll just say it.
Although for the life of me, I actually cannot remember the name of the film. And it's
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane.
Yes,
I know. Yeah.
yes. Also May 6th, George Clooney, Willie Mays, Rudolph Valentino, born in 1895, Sigmund Freud, 1856, and good friend Mr. Brian Brown,
Happy birthday,
another
Brian.
former Slicer. May 7th, David Tomlinson.
Oh, I need to watch Mary Poppins now.
Yes, a staple of the Walt Disney live action films. And Mike Myers.
Oh my word! Do we really need to?
We may have to watch one of the Austin Powers
Yeah,
movies. I know.
Well, those are funny.
Yeah, they are. So also on May 7th, Ann Baxter.
Who's? No, that I was about to make an Ann Baxter joke.
No.
Who's Ann Baxter?
Leave this show. Darren McGavin, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, Johannes Brahms, and host of Cinema Junkie and part of Horrible Imaginings Film Festival, Beth Accomando. Happy birthday. And that is it for the birthdays this time.
This is Kenny Rotter from the Dumbbells and Dragons podcast, where nerd and fitness collide. Join me and a guest every Wednesday for a new episode where we talk about all things nerdy, pop culture, and health and fitness. Follow me on all social media at Dumbbells Dragon or just search Dumbbells and Dragons. Work out, nerd out.
Go give a listen to our friend Kenny over at Dumbbells and Dragons. And now it is time. For what?
For a singular but rather epic feedback.
Epic feedback. Epic.
Of course, when we say epic feedback, it can only come from one source.
And that's Lookie.
The twins.
The twins.
The twins have written to us one more time. And we love it when they do, but I swear, twins.
I love the twins.
I would just, I don't know what I would give to actually have the both of you do this in your voices, okay? It would thrill me
Just
because
do us.
nobody can do it like you can. I mean, I can
Yes.
impersonate you guys, you gals, as best as possible, but it's just not as good. You need to do it. Okay, fine. We'll take this. Anyway, this is in regards to our last episode, episode 115. I think it's 115.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And first off, they said, well, sounds like a big lineup. Likely some great interviews, events, coverage, content for TG Geeks podcast and site. And then we had a little bit about birthdays, and Keith said, the Bard himself, William Shakespeare, and the twins wrote back with, we, at Looky Show, mentioned the playwright in a Fivers episode. The theme is star-crossed lovers, so, of course, Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet.
Play William Shakespeare, well-known example of fictional star-crossed lovers. Also, the play contains the phrase star-crossed lovers. Okay.
Yeah.
And then later on, I guess we did a shout-out on them.
We do a shout
every
out
week.
Every week, yeah.
And you say, I'm going to give a special shout-out to Looky, the twins, Sasha and Dagmar. They're great. You can check them out at Looky Show on Twitter, or you can catch your show. You blah, blah, blah. You'll hear that spiel later on anyway. And they come back with... let's see. We see lots of reviews. I love the twins. The twins are great. The show is campy and fun. I love the twins. I love the twins. They're awesome. And they came back with, you're awesome too. Estimable Labs.
Estimable.
Thank you. Estimable Labs.
Yeah.
Yes, we're dogs. We're Labradors.
Estimable abs. Yeah.
In my dreams.
Yeah.
Anyway, they finish out, we're so pleased to hear that you enjoy the show, and it's lovely that you took the time to include such a nice shout-out. Thanks for such an adorable mention. And then we were talking about OperaCon.
OperaCon, which you'll hear more about
We'll
here
talk a
shortly.
little bit later. Yeah. And they added, that could be fun, particularly if they're including some kind of costume party for opening night.
Well, you never know what they might be.
Bring your own sandals. Imagine all the capes, drapes, monsters, and chains. Hey, what's going on over there? Is it Halloween? No, it's the opera.
Yes. And that's it for our comments. Thank you so much to the Looky twins, Sasha and Dagmar. We want to hear from you, our listeners. If you have something that you want to share with us, whether it's a comment on a show, on an article, on anything, something about the show you like or dislike, let us know. Please be nice. You can comment on our episodes. You can comment on our articles. You can comment on our Facebook, on Twitter. You can even call our listener line at 469-TG-GEEKS, and you can also leave a Facebook message. Now, if you call our listener line, that's 469-TG-GEEKS, 469-844-3357.
Yeah, baby. They're like two gay geeks. They're together, They're two gay guys, and they're geeks. Is that okay?
I just had to put that bumper in since Mark did that for us.
Yeah,
It was
well,
Mike
now we
Myers'
have to
birthday.
watch Austin Powers again.
I know.
Anyway, so you've already heard the interview with Joe Ahearne, and I would recommend, if people want to know what I really thought about the movie B&B, please go to our website, tggeeks.com. You will find it there. We will include a link for that in our show notes, but
as well as a trailer.
as well, yeah, there's a trailer for the
etc.
film.
So,
but that's
yep.
that's in
the article.
That's in
yeah.
the article that
The-
you posted.
The press release.
Yeah, the press release that precedes my review. Anyway, so at least through the review, you can get a sense of what I thought of the film.
Yeah.
And I know that during the interview, you expressed some of your thoughts. But what are some? Okay, so when you started watching it with me, I mean, what were some of your initial thoughts in this film?
Well, as we talked about in the interview, that Mark was very annoying at first. It was just,
And then the character Mark.
Yeah, the character Mark. Yeah, and then it was, then you kind of realized that he's really playing a real person, because there are people like that. And as you got through into it, it's, as you said, this was real life. It wasn't caricatures. It wasn't people playing a part. It wasn't good versus bad. It's each person was good and bad at the same time. And I just thought it was very smart, very intelligent. extremely thoughtful. And here, as we talked in the interview, we're 3 days later still talking about it, still talking about the fallout from the episode, because it really makes you think. It's a real life situation, and the way you would ruminate over it, if something like that happened in your real life, what you would continue to talk about it. And so, having seen, and I think part of it, one of the things that he did say, that not in the interview but in some of the background materials, that he shot some of the scenes as if it were from the character's perspective, and so you really began to live in that character as they were going through the motions of that. And I thought that was really interesting. You got to see things through those characters' eyes.
What did you think of the cast?
I thought they were great. I thought they were just superb. Every single one of them. Although Alexei didn't have that much of a part.
No,
he played the part
played it well.
the
I'm
grunting
sure,
and the...
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if, when there was a character description, for a casting call, it says, Russian, tall, brooding, silent.
Exactly.
Can you play that?
Yeah. But the rest of them, I thought they were brilliant, as far as there is one scene that you see the pain on a character's face, and without going into spoilers, and we tried to not do that in the interview either, but you see it on their faces. You see the emotion, the range of emotion, and the different sides of that character. And while, as he said in the interview, as Joe said in the interview, they approached those characters and didn't judge those characters. They inhabited the characters. So I thought it was great.
There are two roles that just really stood out for me. One was the character of Josh, as played by Paul McGann. Now, prior to this, you and I had really only seen Paul McGann in one thing, and that's Doctor Who.
Right.
And in that,
I thought it was great.
And he's phenomenal in that. In fact,
we may have to watch that again.
I think we have to watch that again.
Well,
too.
we've got our evening lineup for the next 2 weeks.
Don't we though? And I've said this. I think the Doctor Who stories is not very, very good, but Paul McGann himself is amazing in it.
Yep.
And so now to see him play this part, something totally opposite from the happy, optimistic Doctor, and now to play this widower who he's raising a son, he's running a B&B, and you, without becoming preachy, you get this sense of a little bit of almost bitterness over the fact that he knows that this couple is coming back, and he probably feels a little bit kind of a little embattled. We see in the early film, and this is not really so much of a spoiler, but we see a little donation can because of legal costs.
Right. And he makes mention that he had to let the cook go, so because of the legal costs.
So we get a real sense of this almost a defeated man, and yet it never felt overacted. It felt very genuine, and it was just and then we see his character layers begin to just completely peel away.
There was many sides to that character, to all the characters.
Yeah, and the other one that just totally knocked me away was the young actor who played Paul.
Yep, you saw so many different sides of him, and it really kind of that teenage angst, shall we say, and all the things, the range of emotions that you go through as a teenager on multiple things. Every time you turn around, you're into a different emotion and a different, reality, shall we say.
And he played it so well, from being terrified to being scared to being sad. It was just all over the board, and yet it was completely believable with
Right.
everything that he was going through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're not going to spoil anything. I desperately recommend for anybody, if you find out that this movie is playing at a film festival in your area, please, by all means, go see it.
Yep. It is about a gay couple. It's about
bigger than that.
It's
I think.
bigger than that. It's about real life, and it's about what happens in real life.
Mhm.
So it's not just limited to being a gay film. shall we
Right.
say.
I mean, it tells, you can basically say that people make good decisions and people make bad decisions, and this movie is all about good and bad decisions.
Exactly.
And I can't recommend it enough. And for people who are in the UK and in Ireland, it is receiving distribution there, so you should be able to see it hopefully soon.
Yeah.
I don't know what the distribution rules are because it is playing film festivals here in the U.S. and who knows where else.
Yep.
But I absolutely really enjoyed this movie, and the more distance I put myself between me and the film, the more I actually end up loving it, and it's beautifully shot.
Oh yeah, as we talked about and on a low budget.
Yes,
relatively low budget.
This movie is gorgeously shot. I really do recommend seeing this. I mean, in my review, I said it was one of the smartest thrillers I've ever seen, and I stand by that. It's wonderful.
Well, that's kind of it for our second episode, or not second episode, our second segment.
I hope this isn't our second episode.
No, it's not our
but
second
if
episode.
this is our second episode, then we're really doing well by this point.
Exactly.
I can't wait by the time we get to episode 116. Just imagine how great we're going to be.
Exactly. So we always have follow-up items. Check out the calendar on the website. We've got birthdays, events, cons, film festivals, etc. If you know something that should be on the calendar, let us know. Send us a note, and we'll be glad to put it up there. And as you know, we are huge supporters of independent creators, and this is a somewhat independent film.
Well, it is, because they made it independent of any studio.
Yeah, because, and even though Joe and Jane are associated with certain studios and certain television, etc., this was an independent film that they created. But we support independent creators, whether filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, any kind of independent creation. Found there's a lot of talent out there, and they don't necessarily get the fame or the money. They're trying to do something because they love to do it. If you see a crowdfunding campaign or you hear about something on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, please consider supporting it. You never know. You might be part of something big.
Yes.
Please consider supporting independent creators. Phoenix Comic-Con just around the corner.
I'm beginning to get excited.
Yes, May 25th through the 28th. They've announced their last big guest.
Holy cow.
Dick Van Dyke. Man, it's
I mean,
amazing.
wow. I would love to be in the room for that panel.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of people from different shows. They have groups of guests from different shows, several from Daredevil. They have several from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Doctor Who,
just all over the board. It's amazing. So you should check it out. Phoenix Comic-Con, May 25th through 28th, Memorial Day weekend. And there's still tickets available. Well, actually, as of today or the release of this episode, May 1st, the ticket prices have gone up. But their tickets are still available, and I think there's still some hotel rooms available. And they've also announced that Phoenix Comic-Con Fan Fest is going to be on November 11th and 12th. There's more info to come, certainly after Phoenix Comic-Con is done. And OperaCon by Arizona Opera coming October 2017. Now, if you're going to Phoenix Comic-Con, be sure and find the booth for Arizona Opera. They're going to have more information on OperaCon and Hercules versus the Vampires, special events that are planned prior to the performance, and stay tuned for more.
Do we know where the booth is going to be?
I don't. It's going to be in...
Will it be in the dealer's room?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where it's going to be. So check it out if you're going to Phoenix Comic-Con.
Special shout out to Doctor Who Talking Who on Twitter. They published the Doctor Who Fancast Guide that's chock full of some fascinating stories that have been published throughout the week. Or actually, I take that back. It publishes like every day or every other day, and they just take what's been happening within the last 24 to 48 hours, and they are always picking up our stories and running them. So we thank them for that.
Yes, thank
and
you.
You can find the Fancast Guide by going to Twitter and doing a search for @TalkingWho. And there's also the Arkle Times Post Dispatch News. That is published by the Nazi punching scald, Brian Weber. And you can find the Arkle Times Post Dispatch News by searching Twitter @Arkle.
Yeah, and I think Brian has he's doing a new YouTube web series. We need to find out about that. Yeah,
we definitely have to talk to him about that.
Yep.
I'd like to learn more.
Yep.
He also posts or has on Tumblr the incorrect Star Trek Voyager quotes. And this one made me giggle. Imagine Tom Paris and Harry Kim. They're flying off in the Delta Flyer. And you got Tom saying, "Ooh, listen to her purr. Have you ever heard anything so sweet?" And Harry says, "If you two want to get a room, just let me know, Tom." And then Tom says to the Delta Flyer, "Don't listen to him, baby. He doesn't understand us."
Yeah, speaking of Harry Kim,
Garrett Wang's going to be there.
He's going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con.
And I've also heard that he is amazing. Yeah, as a panelist, that he's fantastic.
Cool.
Yes, so we have to check that one too. Also, special thanks to Sci-Fi Obsession. They continually pick up our stories and really a wide variety of stuff that we publish. They're always republishing. And they can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/sci-fi-ob. That is SCIFIOB.
And we want to give a shout out, as always, to the Lookie Show, the twins, Sasha and Dagmar. They really are. You have to go and see their show on YouTube.
Yes.
We get lots of love from them on Twitter. They're always kind of doing something on Twitter, retweeting things and talking about different people and boosting the signal for people on Twitter. But they're at Lookie Show on Twitter, but their real main focus is on YouTube, the Lookie Show. They do reviews of old movies, not just old movies, but newer films as well as things all across the board. They have a great way of breaking it down into short snippets and doing it in a really fun way.
Mm-hmm. And that can be one dangerous rabbit hole to go down.
Oh, yeah.
Because you will be watching that for some time, and it's beyond belief.
Yep.
Also, special shout out to probably our favorite Facebook group, the Gay Geek. Favorite because, well, Gay Geek, how do you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
Fantastic content, fantastic people, and we have to give special shout out to Jeremiah Reeves. He is their supreme moderator, and he gave us his permission for us to share our episodes there. And I even shared our review of B&B on there as well. I felt that was a good place to put that there. So special thanks, Jeremiah and the Gay Geek.
Yeah, and we want to give a special shout out to the Autism Awareness site that they're doing a Kickstarter for to raise awareness on autism. They're doing a documentary. Go check it out at Kickstarter. We're going to have Kickstarter.com and film ethnographer Autism Awareness. Do a search on that.
Mm-hmm.
So go check that out. We'll have a link on the website. And we want to remind you to occasionally click on our Amazon ads. In fact, there is an Amazon ad and a widget on the side for our good friend Hamish Downey. He has a new anime that manga comic book that he's released, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's very Japanese, and I enjoy reading it.
There's a lot of manga fans that are out there. If you're really into that stuff, check it out.
Check it out. And also there's a widget just below that for the Autism Awareness Kickstarter program. So check those out. And our Amazon ads at the bottom, the widgets on the side, go ahead and click on them. It lets Amazon know that we're getting some traffic. And if you decide to buy something, you don't have to. But if you do, use one of our search ads, and that gives us a little bit of a kickback.
Yeah, I like it. I'm glad you mentioned some of the widgets because, I mean, two of our favorite authors are there.
Yep.
Jeannie Koch and Jonathan Latt.
As
well as Christy Hartman.
C.A. Hartman, yes.
Yes, three of our favorite authors.
Yes, and check them out. And lastly, but not leastly, please rate us on
iTunes.
There you go.
I know you too well.
Yes, you do. All right, and that's it. Up next time, now I said last time that we would have the composer and the librettist for Copper Queen,
right?
but
We're bumping that.
We're bumping that to this next week because we had
Joe Ahearne this
Joe
week.
Ahearne land in our lap just all of a
Very,
sudden.
it just happened.
Yeah.
So we decided to give that one a preference,
especially since the movie was just premiered in the
Mhm.
U.S. and we wanted to jump on that. So next week we're going to have that interview with
Clinton John.
Clinton John. So check it out next week.
And that's Clint and John, not Clinton John.
Clinton John, yes. And that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for the Webcast episode. We're going to have several links to things that we talked about. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or our website, tggeeks.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.